we would typically see when we type ls-l on a file or a folder. You would see the three entities that can be applied, permissions can be applied to. First one over here is the user. And the user can have anything from read, write, and execute. And then we have the group owner of a file or folder, and it can have read, write, or execute. And then we have everybody else on the system. If anybody has an account on that system, they fall under the others. And they can also have read, write, and execute. There are special permissions that we can associate too, but let's just focus on these for right now. So in our little scenario, what I'm going to do is create a group called sales. So the group will be sales. And I'll have another group in there also. And I'm going to create a folder, the sales folder. And I'm going to give the sales group access to the sales folder. I'm going to, as a matter of fact, I will take all permissions away from everybody else. I'm going to take access away from everyone else so that the only one that will have permission is group in this case. And that's how we normally would do it. And then if we have users who need access to the sales folder, we put them in the sales group and they get access to the sales folder. Works great. The problem arises when, as in any modern situation, we have a user who is not a member of the group sales, and we don't want to make them a member of the group sales, who need access to this. So we're going to say we have this user, Pam, and she needs access to that folder. She's in the accounting group, by the way, and she needs access to that folder to see information about sales for the month. But she only needs read-only access to that folder. In the traditional way that we handle Linux permissions, this is very difficult to do. Because what we could do to accomplish this without FACLs is, I guess, we could put, read and execute here. Oops, execute. Which would allow Pam to access the folder. Well, the problem with that is that allows everybody else on the system to also access the folder. Not what we want to do. So we can't do that one. The other option we have, really even a worse option, is I guess we could make Pam the default user owner of the folder and give her permissions that way. But whenever you own something, you get excessive permissions to it. So that isn't a good idea either. So what are we going to do? What we'll do is make sure that FACLs are enabled on the system, and that would allow me to literally add Pam to the access list for this folder, right? A second user, because we have the default user right here that has nothing. Well, Pam will be a second user on that folder, and Pam will get read-only access. All right, so what I've done is I've created the sales group. There's a sales group, and there's an accounting group. And Pam, I created a user Pam. There she is. And Pam is, if I ID Pam, Pam is a member of the accounting group. Fantastic. And then we have Mary over here. And if I ID Mary, Mary is a member of the sales group. So in our scenario, what I'll do is create a folder that will be owned by sales, traditional way we've done it in the past. And then we'll actually take a look at FACLs. All right, so let's first create the default folder. So let me issue in here. All right, so we'll make the folder, make dir, and we'll make it sales. As a matter of fact, what we'll do is we'll set the permissions as we create it. So remember, there are three entities, right? So first one is always the user. I'm going to give them 0. The group is going to be sales, and I'm going to give them all permission. That's where the 7 comes in. And then 0 to everybody else. Now, there are also those special permissions that I can add, and I will do that right now. And I'm going to put a 3 in the beginning. And that says add the set group bit and the sticky bit to this folder when it's created. All right, so we'll do sales. And then after it's created, I'm going to chown sales with the sales group, because I do have the sales group already in the system, and sales. And then we'll do an ls-ld on sales. And there you go. This is the traditional way that we would see permissions set in a group setting like this. So we have the sales team who need access to the sales folder, They own it. The sales group owns it. So anytime I want to give somebody access, I put them in the sales group. Well, Mary is a member of sales, so she should be able to go into there. Sales, and I'll have her touch a file. And sure enough, there is Mary's file. So she's good to go. Everything is perfect. So she's a member of sales. It even changes the group ownership to sales, and she's picking up the permissions that she needs. Well, we have a situation with Pam. Pam needs access to this in a read-only fashion, and I want to make sure that she has that. To do that, we have to make sure that access control lists are actually enabled on the file system. Something to keep in mind, not every Linux distribution actually enables it by default. You may have to turn it on yourself. In the particular distribution and the version that we're in, it is enabled. Now, I will tell you, previous versions of CentOS Red Hat did not enable FACLs by default. So first thing we want to do is check to see if it's on. And the easiest way to do that, I'm going to do the mount command here. So I'm going to mount, but I'm going to grep for root. And what that gives me is this right here. This is what I want, because I'm going to check that file system. That's the root file system where this folder sales exists. And I'm going to do that with the tune2 fs l. I think it's lowercase l. And I'll just grab that. This is why I do it, because I'll have to type. And then I don't want to see everything that's going to come out of that. I just want to see anything that has default set to it. And sure enough, the first mount options, default mount options right here, and we can see that FACLs are enabled. So by default, when we create a file system in CentOS 6 or above, FACLs are enabled. Let's go look at that. Now, there are two commands that you need to become comfortable with when using FACLs. First one is the get FACL command. And if I put get FACL and I'm going to run that against the sales folder that we have, we'll see a lot of the same things we see when we normally look at it, just in a slightly different format. So this tells me the name of it. It's the sales. The user owner is root. That's okay, not a big deal. Group owner is sales. This right here where it says flags is showing me the special bits that I set. So I set the set group and the sticky, and you can see S and T there. That's what they represent. And then we finally see the permissions that are being applied to the three entities that are here. Right? So the user, in this case root, is getting no permissions. The group sales, which is here, is getting read, write, and execute, and these permissions too. And everybody else on the system is getting nothing. So that's great, but we need to give Pam access to it. So along with the get FACL command, there's another one called the set FACL command. Set FACL allows us to set the FACLs on the folder. Now, the key with working with FACLs, everyone, is set your permissions the traditional way first. You can set the default and all the permissions, original permissions, on a folder with FACL, but it can definitely be more challenging. So do what I did and just create the folder with the correct permissions or smot it with the correct permissions, get it set up the way you want it to be, and then add the FACLs after that. All right, so first thing we'll do is we want to set up default FACLs, or default permission scheme, so that anything that is created in here inherits that, because that's not the case right now. So first one, we want the sales group to have full access, right? So that's what we'll do. So you type set FACL, and then you put M for mode or modify. That comes first, and what comes after that is the information we want to change. Now in this case, I want to set the default permissions first. So I type D. That stands for default. I put a colon. That's the separator. That's all the colon represents. I'm going to put G for group, colon again, and I'm going to say I want the sales group, colon, to have read, write, execute to this folder. That D says that this will now be the default permissions on that folder, and that's good, so the FACLs will be in charge of that. Excellent. Yep, got to put the sales folder in there. Okay, and now we'll type get FACL again. And sure enough, we see something a little different. Let me just clear my screen up here. All right. So once again, here's the basic information we looked at before, but now we have the default information also. So the default information is that the group will get read, write, execute, and we explicitly said that the group sales will get read, write, execute to it. This is the mask. The mask is kind of like the UMask in the file system, where it subtracts permissions that the system designates as excessive. In this case, it's not subtracting everything, that they will get read, write, execute from it. But you will see as you create files that the mask will change. Just keep that in mind. So that's it. We've set up the default. Now what we want to do is see if we can get Pam to access this. So before we do that, let's just verify that Pam can't access it, right? So Pam's in the accounting group. So if I try as Pam, logged in as Pam right now, try to go to sales, I'm going to get a permission denied. If I try to touch something in sales, I'm going to get a permission denied. She has no access to it. So let's use FACLs to give her access, read-only access to that folder. All right, so once again, here are the basic permissions. I'm going to Control L. I'm going to up arrow. This format you see right here is the standard format you use pretty much all the time. You can make it a heck of a lot more complicated if you want to, but this is pretty much the standard format. The only thing we would remove in this case is really the D, and then we would modify this part with Pam's information and what we want her to have. Because we're going to say we don't want Pam to have default read permissions to everything, right? We just want her to have read permission right now, and as we go through this scenario, we can expand that if we need to. All right, but for right now, we're just going to say sales. So let's clear that line here. All right, so let's add Pam to the access control list. So use the command set FACL. Once again, same format every time. It's M for modify. I want to modify something. I'm not going to put the D this time. I'm going to say U, colon, for user. And I'll put Pam's name, colon, and what I want her to have. Read dash X. Now, I don't have to put the dash in there, but I do. Because I think it works. So you don't have to. As a matter of fact, I'll remove it, and we'll see what happens with that. And sales. All right, so this is it. Once again, M for modify, set FACL, M for modifying, or mode. I want to explicitly give this to the user. I want it to be Pam. Pam has an account on the system, of course. If there is no Pam, it's not going to work. And I want her permissions to be read and execute. Now, why does she need the X? Ask yourself that. She needs the X because I'm giving her permissions to get into the folder. Read by itself on a folder, she's not going to be able to open the folder and actually access the items in there. So you need on a folder for someone to read the contents, read and execute. And then I say it's going on sales. Now press enter. And then we'll type get FACL here again. And now let's look at it. So we see the same thing we've seen before. Everything looks good. Oh, but there she is right there. Notice it did put the little dash in there. So just realize you don't have to use it. Probably good practice to use it. Just get comfortable with permissions anyway. And Pam is now picking up read access to this folder. So remember, we went over the Pam before. And we got permission denied, permission denied, permission denied. Now, in some instances, you may have to log out, log back in, Pam, the account, so that she gets the proper access to it. But shouldn't be necessary right now. So let's clear this out and let's CD into sales. Oh, look at that, PWD, sales. Let's do an ls-l on sales. And sure enough, she can see the Mary file, and she can read it based on that permission right there. She's going to be able to read it, and that's all we want her to be able to do. This format right here, making sure that FACLs is on, and then just remembering that format. If it's a group, change it to a G, put the group name in here. If it's a user, it's U with the name of the user in here. And then after that comes the permissions, and after that comes the folder that you want to apply it to. Once again, it can get much more complicated, and there's a great, if you go to set FACL on the man page, I love man pages that have examples, right? So if there's an example, and here we go, God bless their little hearts, they have examples, and that's all you say. Even if you get a little lost about what you're supposed to do, if you come in here and look at this, yeah, I mean, you can read this line now and tell me exactly what's going to happen. All right? You can look at it and see exactly what's going to happen. We can also delete, you can remove people from the group. So Pam has access. We can use that just to remove her from the group. So it's a great little one. And there is a Get FACL man page also. So look at that one too. So once again, Pam's good to go. She's got access. Let's say it's done. We want now for, Pam's read what she needs to read. We don't want her to permanently have access to this. I can go over here, clear my screen, and I can just use that same one that I sent, and I can literally just remove Pam this way. Notice I don't even have to set permissions. If I do this, if I say set FACL X for remove, and the user is Pam, it doesn't matter what comes after that. The user is going to be removed from the access control list. And that's what we want. All right, so we'll do that again. We go back over here to Pam. We'll CD out, and then we'll CD back in again, and permission denied. She's no longer in the ACL for this. Pretty cool, right? Now, this is a modern way you handle file permissions in a modern operating system, like a Windows server, or Mac OS X as a client, or Linux servers, Unix servers. They're all handled with this access control list philosophy.